Hello, my name is Tomahawk, and I love movies and comics and TV shows and the internet and talking. So I was thinking to myself, what if I combined all of these things and made internet videos where I talk about those first three things? So that's what this is. A brand new groundbreaking genre of internet video where a person talks at a camera about pop culture stuff. And if this just so happens to already exist, this genre, I'm sure nobody has heard the opinion of a heterosexual cisgender white male. So I'm pretty sure I got that market covered. So, what are we doing? On the surface, these shows seem like they have a lot in common. They're both workplace comedies done in a mockumentary format made by some of the same people, nonetheless. But ask nearly anyone which show is superior and they will respond with a scoff before giving their actual answer. And I just want to say outright, this is not going to be a comparison of quality. Each show has their ups and downs. This is going to be a sort of compare and contrast of what makes each show different, how they approach comedy, and what your favorite show between these two says about you as a person. So this is going to have more in common with a BuzzFeed quiz more so than an actual competition. So with that out of the way, let's just jump right in. The most telling difference between the two shows is actually in each show's setting. The Office is set in Scranton, Pennsylvania, whereas Parks and Rec is set in Pawnee, Indiana. Can you spot the difference between these two cities? That's right. They are both different words that are on different sides of the screen. So, good job, you. But I'm also gonna go a little deeper and tell you that Scranton is a real place that you can go and actually visit. As a matter of fact, John Krasinski, the actor who plays Jim Halpert, went to Scranton. The footage that you see in the intro sequence of the show is shot by him. But if you're living in Pawnee, Indiana, you are living in a fantasy world. There is no Pawnee, Indiana. But, Tomahawk, I'm pretending to hear you say, Superman lives in Metropolis, whereas Spider-Man lives in New York, Metropolis being a fake place, New York being a real place, but they are both very equally poppycock. Oh, you dear, naive YouTube viewer. I wish I had your innocence. Each show's setting is indicative of how each show approaches comedy. The fantasy world of Pawnee, Indiana allows for more fantastical things to happen, whereas The Office, set in the real world, has to revel in the mundane. This is best exemplified in what happens to each show's goofy but lovable boss. They both get a happy conclusion, like in Michael Scott's instance, he gets married and has kids, the thing that he's really truly been craving throughout the entire series. But it's implied that Leslie Knope becomes, let me check this blank piece of paper here, President of the United States, which at the time, when Parks was filmed, was a well-respected position. Politics. Not gonna do that much. Let's take a closer look at what this entails, because The Office definitely has moments that are incredibly wacky and probably unlike anything you would see in your day-to-day workplace. But The Office had a way of presenting these unbelievable moments in a believable way, and this comes down to The Office's protagonist, Jim. Jim was always the main character of The Office. It was never Michael Scott. I see a lot of people say that, the show lost its direction after the main character left, and that is always implied to be Michael Scott, but Michael was never the main character. Jim was. Michael may have been the most engaging presence on The Office, but the viewer is always meant to see themselves in Jim. The general format of the show is something silly happens, and then the camera turns to Jim and you get his reaction to it. Jim, being the audience stand-in, is a normal person surrounded by chaos. This provides the series to play with concepts and gags that could only exist in a heightened reality while presenting it in a way that still feels grounded. Now, Parks and Rec has had a few similar characters who could sort of fill the same role as Jim. Now, we are going to go looking for our other Jim, but you need to know ahead of time that most, not all, but most of the characters on Parks and Rec have an Office counterpart that serves a similar purpose in terms of character archetype and comedic potential. Parks and Rec has a smaller cast compared to The Office, So you can kind of take two characters from The Office, as there isn't a direct one-to-one parallel, and more or less get the same feeling and vibe for a character. For instance, the most clear parallel between both shows is Jerry and Toby. They both serve as their workplace punching bag. To keep this moving forward, Ron Swanson's traditional masculinity paired with his love for the outdoors pairs very similarly with Dwight, who shares many of the same interests. But to add in some Stanley due to, distaste for his job and, mustache. Tom is a perfect mix of Kelly and Ryan because Kelly and Tom both share a love of celebrity culture, almost to the point that it nearly consumes them, whereas Ryan and Tom both find a particular identity in attempting to gain and maintain entrepreneurial success, more so than using that entrepreneurial power for anything in particular. April Ludgate's primary purpose in Parks and Rec is to confuse and generally make the people around her uncomfortable. This is her primary comedic potential. If you pair this with her undeniable sex appeal, it's obvious that her Office counterpart is Creed Bratton, who is my favorite character on The Office. To get an even clearer sense of April as a character, you can throw in a dash of Gabe's love of the macabre. Macabre? It's one of those words I only ever see written down. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and I'm too lazy to check. Next one. And Andy is Andy, as in Andy Dwyer is Andy Bernard, in that they are both goofballs who want to find fame and fortune in their musical prowess. And just to get this out of the way, Anne is not Karen. She is actually designed to be the Pam of Parks and Rec. She's normal compared to the rest of the cast, but also ultimately most viewers find the character to be a little dull, because, the rest of the cast is really quirky and interesting. So if Anne is Pam, maybe we'll find our Jim in the guy that she ends up marrying. Chris Traeger? No. See, this is why earlier I said that most, not all characters have a counterpart. Chris Traeger's defining characteristic is his intense emotions. And normally this comes out in a bright, burning positivity. And very few characters feel positivity on The Office. No one on The Office feels anything as intensely as Chris does about his job, his relationships, or the thing that he feels most strongly about: pooping.
Stop pooping.
Another character who doesn't really have a parallel is Donna. I sat and I tried desperately to try and piece something together. She's kind of Kelly in the same way that Tom is, with the sort of love of celebrity culture, but she doesn't let it consume her to the point where it becomes her identity. She's kind of Phyllis in her sort of unexpected but very open sexuality, but honestly not really either. So no good fit, none. So who is the Parks and Rec Bizarro Jim? It's the show's most hated character. It's Mark Brendanowitz. In the beginning of Parks, the show was a bit more subdued. The tone felt much closer to The Office. It was not nearly as wacky as the show would become in later seasons. But the weirder characters in Parks at the beginning were tended to be guided by Mark, who is presented as the voice of reason. But the thing is, he sucks. He's really boring. And as the characters on Parks were growing into their own, he just kind of didn't. He felt bland compared to the world that he inhabited. He left the show, and it turned out to be for the better. He becomes replaced in the Jim role by Ben, who I'm sure many of you were, shouting at me, despite the fact that I can't hear you. That's not how this works. Ben is a character who can match the energy of the Parks and Rec gang while maintaining the reality of the universe. For instance, when Parks shows what happens to each character under the influence of snake juice, Ben does this.
Baba booey.
Can you picture Mark doing anything interesting? I can't. Can you see Jim from The Office doing anything similar to what these characters have done? Not really. So what this is demonstrating is what happens when the character that grounds the show is stripped away. The Office maintains this feeling of reality, whereas Parks and Rec transcends reality, which allows the characters to achieve higher levels of ambition, which this also presents the universe as a nicer place to live in Parks compared to the bleak reality of The Office. To examine this in a more thorough manner, let's look back at the character comparisons and see what would have happened to the Office characters if they existed in the world of Parks and Rec. Because in The Office, if you're not in the main two couples, Jim and Pam, Dwight and Angela, you don't really get to achieve your dreams. In the finale of The Office, Toby is fired for stalking Nellie. He says that his life has become meaningless after the documentary has ended. See? It's bleak. Jerry from Parks becomes the mayor of Pawnee for the remainder of his life. He dies peacefully at the age of 100, surrounded by his still beautiful wife and family. In Parks and Rec, characters can find happiness if they're honest about their passions and they work to bring them to life. Toby always wanted to be a novelist. If his story occurred in this world of Parks, he probably would have gained thousands of fans from the documentary. These fans would buy his books and he would become somewhat of a household name. Or maybe his obsession with Scranton Strangler would have manifested itself in a viral podcast. Kelly and Ryan's story ends with them continuing in their will they won't they relationship. Ryan never re-achieves the height of his Dunder Mifflin success. Tom's finale shows him finding success and becoming a best-selling author and motivational speaker. He finds success throughout his many failures, which is a nice arc throughout the entire series. This is contrasted in how Ryan and Kelly never really evolved beyond where they were when their relationship started. April has a happy ending in her continuing marriage to Andy Dwyer, which looks to be a happy one, and they decide to have children, which is, good. But the true happy thing in this is that April gets to be weird in achieving these sort of traditional and normal goals. Her weirdness is how she stays true to herself. And the fact that she is able to surround herself with people who love her for her weirdness and not in spite of it is the happy ending. This is contrasted by Creed, who gets arrested and presumably sent to prison, which, if he existed in the world of Parks, probably wouldn't have happened. Basically anything's better than that, right? So, I don't know, Creed's weird. He probably just kept being weird and he would be happy. Andy Bernard, the Nard Dog, finds that he will never truly feel like he is able to chase his dreams to become a famous singer until he knows that Dunder Mifflin will no longer be a safe haven for him. He decides he needs to either sink or swim. He goes on a reality TV show and gets rejected so bad that he starts crying, and this causes him to become a meme. So he becomes famous, but it's bittersweet. It's not what he wanted. The finale shows that Andy wishes he could bring back the good old days of just working at the paper company. Like other Andy Dwyer always wanted to be a famous musician. He worked and made some compromises, and he was able to build a career through music. Now, he's not a household name, but he does become something of a local celebrity after transitioning into a children's performer and then getting his own TV show. It might not be exactly what he wanted, but he was able to build a career out of doing the thing that he loved. Not to mention that Andy got to live out his life with April, which is its own happy ending. You kidding me? Now, I already told you what happens to Michael. He gets married to Holly, and he has kids. This is presented as his ideal outcome. This is contrasted by Leslie, who gets the beautiful family and achieves success in her career. If Michael Scott had been on Parks and Rec, his true passion will become a more notable point in the overarching theme of the series. So what's Michael's true passion? Is it selling paper? No, you silly duck. Michael wants to be a famous actor. He wants to make movies. This is why he's always playing these, silly characters. And this is why he's always going to improv classes and it's why he chooses to write, direct, and star in his own film. If he existed in the world of Parks and Rec, he probably would become a Tommy Wiseau-esque figure, with Threat Level Midnight becoming at least a local hit, if not a bigger hit, like The Room. But instead, this character trait just kind of falls to the wayside. In Parks and Rec, the universe is an optimistic place. The moral of the story, as it were, is that if you can find your team and you all work together to tackle your goals and bring your dreams to life, you can do it. It may be an undeniably long and difficult road to get there, and your dreams may not turn out the way you thought they were, but they are attainable. That's not to say that The Office is all doom and gloom. The point of The Office is to demonstrate. The moral of its story is that it's the small and seemingly mundane interactions with the people around you that make life worth living. There's joy and fun in the environment you inhabit if you're bold enough and weird enough to cultivate it. So yeah, I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. It's just that they appeal to different kinds of people. But hey, if you're one of those people that's just insistent on one being the winner, it's The Office. And I'm not saying that that show's my favorite. I'm not going to say which one's my favorite. But The Office just kind of wins in terms of pop culture dominance. What Friends was to the 90s, what I Love Lucy was to the 50s, The Office just kind of is to the 2000s. But hey, that seems like a topic for another time. So comment below. Which is your favorite and why? I'd love to hear from you. This is a very small channel. I've never made a video like this before, so if you would like to see more of this kind of content, please let me know. Every comment, every like, every view, it means the world to me. I really appreciate it. If there's anything you'd like for me to talk about, let me know. I have a podcast called The Silly Cast. It comes out every Wednesday, and on this week's episode, we talk about The Office and fan theories that don't really hold up if you think about it. It's a lot of fun. Got like 60 episodes you can check out. It's a good time, I think, but I'm biased. Yeah. Is that it? I think that's it.